Hello and welcome to Toolbox episode 10. We are in the emotion regulation unit, and our skills we are learning today are check the facts and opposite action, which are actually two of my favorites. So this webinar series is put on for you by Youth Eastside Services in partnership with the Lake Washington School District. What we do, Youth Eastside Services is the leading behavioral health service provider for children and youth, ages birth to 22, and we serve families in East King County. The services we provide are youth and family mental health counseling, substance use and co-occurring disorder counseling, as well as community education and prevention programs. Kaylin and I are part of that team in the Lake Washington School District. If you would like to reach out to us, we're actually not currently accepting new clients, but please feel free to check our website or also give us a call if you would like to see when we will be offering new services for folks. You can also follow us on social media at any of those platforms listed there. And if you are in need of support and 911 is not the right option, you can always call the King County Crisis Line 24/7. It's listed there for you. You can also text the crisis line listed there as well 24/7. Or if you are a teen and would like to chat with another teen either on the phone or through like a e-messaging system, you can go to those places there 6 to 10 p.m. nightly if you're a teen and want to chat with other teens. I am Delaney Not-Nearest, the school-based behavioral health coordinator. I'm a social worker by training and a drug and alcohol counselor.
And I'm Kaylin Griffith. I'm a behavioral health support specialist, and I am a licensed mental health counselor associate and substance use disorder professional trainee.
All of this material that we use in this webinar series comes from these two resources, the DBT in Schools manual, as well as the DBT Skills Training Manual. DBT was created by Marsha Linehan. Kaylin and I are both foundationally trained in DBT, and Youth Eastside Services is a DBT informed agency. This webinar series is not meant to be a supplement for treatment. It is just meant for educational services. So if you are in need of services, please reach out to those resources we provided you a few slides ago.
All right, so today's agenda, we are going to start with mindfulness. That should be no surprise to anyone. And then we're going to cover our skill for emotion regulation for today, which is check the facts and opposite action, two different ones today. We'll give you something to try at home. And as always, we will host a Q&A. And just to review our toolbox so far, obviously we have our skills for mindfulness and distress tolerance. Those were the first two modules that we did. And then now we are in the middle, actually, of our emotion regulation module. Last week, we talked about functions of emotions and describing emotions. And this week, we'll start talking a little bit more about things to actually do to regulate those emotions instead of just observing them. So the facts and opposite action. And of course, we're going to start with our mindfulness practice. So I'm actually going to stop sharing and share a different screen. And this is, we're going to do mindfulness a little bit differently this time, even though we do typically just do one video. We're going to do our video this week as kind of an intro to the skill. And then we're going to follow up with a little bit more practice after the video is over.
Hi everybody, it's Nadine again from Willow Rock Wellness on episode number 2 of the Secret Weapon series for practical skills to keep your cool and build up your strength at work. Now, this skill that I'm introducing today is something that is very near and dear to my own heart, and I use it on a regular basis in my personal life and in my working life as well. And it is called willing hands. And you may have heard of this before. Again, it's a skill from DBT, from Marsha Linehan's team, and it's based on some Zen Buddhist concepts about the connection of mind and body, which I think is pretty cool. So the ingredients that you need essentially are just your hands, a table or a podium or somewhere that you are possibly behind so that you are doing this discreetly, although I have just stood in line and held my hands this way also. And then of course you need to be amped up. Some situation is happening with a customer right in front of you, or a task has been assigned to you that you don't really enjoy doing or makes you feel uncomfortable, and you're starting to feel amped up. So the idea is this: willingness is a concept, it's a mindset of allowing a moment to happen as it happens, being open to accept the moment as it unfolds, and being confident in the fact that you can manage whatever that moment throws your way. And the idea of willing hands is that the hands are going to simulate a sensation of openness, so that as you are acting in front of your coworkers, or you're communicating with your boss or that customer, you are reminded continuously to be open to the moment. And what I'm telling you is this: I am about to make a cold call to a customer. It would be really, really great if I could land this account for my company. In fact, my boss is continuing to follow up, and I am not the best with the cold calling. And I find that I get nervous about the phone, because I don't know about you, but personally, me, I sound like a young person on the phone, so people don't take me seriously. So it's important that I get my language articulate, and that I am very clear and not all scattery like I sometimes come across. So before making that phone call, what I would do is be sitting at my desk doing some paced breathing in advance, which was skill number 1. So that's the short inhale, long exhale, and all the while holding my hands face palm up in my lap, letting myself feel the air cross my palms, allowing myself to be open to the experience, and allowing my body to keep reminding my mind of that. And I find that it helps me bring my anxiety and my stress down. So again, I can focus on the conversation, on troubleshooting questions and problem solving, and getting answers and all of the information that I need before we end the call. So try it tomorrow. See if it works out. You can even try it in your personal life. And I'd love to hear from you. Let me know in the comments below.
All right, and spoiler alert, we are gonna try it. So right now I want folks to kind of visualize, I mean, a phone call or a cold call like she was describing is a great example, but I really want folks to kind of just have that in mind, thinking about some sort of situation that makes you nervous, whether that is gonna be something like a presentation, a call, like the video said, anything else that kind of puts pressure on you and causes those kinds of feelings of anxiousness, nervousness, stress, and just kind of hold that really quickly. It would be helpful too if folks would kind of practice with just kind of rating your emotions, because then you can kind of notice the way that this does have an effect. But for example, if I am thinking about I'm about to go on stage and make a speech, I'm usually pretty comfortable with public speaking, but I do still get that nervousness. So if I were thinking about that, my temperature score would probably be around like a 7 out of 10 in terms of anxiety. So picturing that visualization in your mind, either like close your eyes and picture yourself standing backstage about to go on. And we often think about how situations and stress impact our bodies. But research also shows that our bodies can impact our minds and how we can experience events. For anyone that's ever heard of like the Superman pose, that's something that's super, super popular in science and literature, about how like you literally stand like Superman for a minute or two before you have to do something that requires a really good performance. It actually will improve your confidence and improve your performance, because it does have a feedback loop in our bodies where our bodies kind of inform our mind on how to feel. So in other words, the relationship between mind and body goes both ways. And as such, we can make use of our bodies to help ourselves feel better in stressful situations and prepare us to do better in stressful situations. So a half smile and willing hands are 2 different DBT skills that focus on using your bodies to communicate with our brains in the opposite direction we normally would. They communicate that we're okay. And they can help us regulate our systems, accept situations, and feel better in the moment. And the video that we just watched really covered willing hands. So if you're seated, you can place your hand on your lap, palms up and fingers relaxed and slightly curved as if you were receiving something. For those that remember our muscle relaxation practice a couple of weeks ago, just notice that a really relaxed feeling, like when your hands are relaxed, they are not straight. So let go of whatever tension is in them. you're standing, you can also just drop your shoulders down, unclench your hands and turn your palms out, again, holding them a little bit up and relaxing your fingers. You can also do this lying down. And then the other option that you are welcome to practice instead, if willing hands maybe just isn't for you, or just thinking about ableism, half smile is something that also folks can try, in which you would just relax the muscles in your face from your forehead down to your jaw and chin, again, thinking about tension and relaxation, and allow the corners of your mouth just to turn up ever so slightly. So not like a full-blown smile, you're not doing a photo op or anything like that, but just kind of relaxed and peaceful. So I'm gonna have folks choose whichever one they are feeling comfortable with. I particularly like willing hands. I use it a lot actually, so I'm gonna do that. And I'm gonna set a timer for a minute, and I'm just gonna have folks practice really quickly. As folks are practicing this, I want folks to remember to keep breathing as we're going. I mean, video mentioned paced breathing helps a lot with this one. And as well, if you notice your mind getting distracted, go ahead and just gently turn your mind back to the practice. All right. How was that for you?
It was good. I like the willing hands. I often actually forget that skill. And it's kind of, I think it makes it a little bit less, what you said was very eloquent and well phrased, but it just kind of reminds me of the fake it till you make it, where you're like, okay, I might not be feeling this way, but I'm going to put my body in this way and it will make an impact. But I often forget about the skill of willing hands. So it's always nice to get that reminder.
Yeah, there's also some research behind the smile thing. I think it's either mirror neurons or something else. I don't have a degree in neurobio, so don't hold me to that. But if you smile, it actually will make you feel better if you do it long enough, because your brain is responding to your environment, which your smile is part of your environment, and your musculature kind of indicates to your brain how your body should be feeling, which actually ties really well into our skills for the day, because sometimes when we're stressed, anxious, or worried about whatever it is, smiling is not often the expression that we are experiencing naturally on our faces. So, choosing to have actions, we will address that in a couple of minutes.
Yeah. So last time we talked about the components of emotion and we learned about the model. It's a really nice diagram. We'll see it in a moment, so don't worry if you don't remember it. But we figured out that if we kind of change one component, whether it's our thoughts or how we perceive the event, or kind of just even being able to correctly identify the emotion, if we change one thing, we can actually impact and change the entire response. So for example, if, say Kaylin was talking about facial expressions, right? If we choose a different action or a different way to portray our faces, we can actually probably change the outcome of the event, right? If Kaylin looks really upset and angry versus if she has a small half smile, that half smile might change how I respond to her if she ran into me in the hallway or something like that, or if I did something that upset her. And so, which then of course will change the next prompting event. So actually, if we go to the next slide, I can show you the model. Okay, perfect. I think this actually will go through all of the numbers when you click it.
Oh.
Yeah, I just copied and pasted it from our last one, so it'll go through. But so if we think about all of these different pieces of this model, so the first one is the prompting event, the things we have that have impacted us from before, like our past, if we slept, didn't sleep, we're hungry, which is number 2, the vulnerability factors. 3 is how we think about the event. 4 is what's going on inside of our body. 5 is what's going on outside of our body. And then 6 is consequences of those actions. So kind of an external thing. but what happens based off of what we did. And then 7 is the next event, because things are often always connected. They don't stand alone. We don't exist in a vacuum. And kind of what we pointed out last time is if you look at the 2 circles, it's sort of a feedback loop, right? If you do one thing, it'll then set off another thing, and it can set off a different thing. But if you look at the arrows, different things can connect to different places. So this is the model that we're working with when we're talking about emotion regulation. And then go ahead and go to the next slide for me. Perfect. So how can we impact that model? In general, last time we just talked about this is the model. You can vaguely impact some of these things, but now we're going to get a little bit more detailed on what can you actually impact. So checking the facts is going to be in spot number 3. And don't worry, I'll show you the diagram again on the next slide. But checking the facts is the first skill we'll go over today. And that is, how do our interpretations match the reality of the situation, or do our interpretations match the reality? And really looking through that, because it might not be the case. We talked a little bit about this last time, but didn't identify it as a skill. So for example, if Kaylin doesn't say hi to me in the hallway at work, I think maybe she's ignoring me, whereas maybe she just didn't see me. I don't know. I have to check the facts of what the situation actually is, and how we can do that is, again, we can check in with each other or ask, and really focus on our, what am I trying to think of the skills where it's what we observe. Like, we can see certain things, we can feel certain things, our 5 senses, we can't interpret things, or we don't know if our interpretations are correct, right? Like, I can say the weather is terrible outside. That gives no information to Kaylin. I could say the weather is sunny and hot, as in, well, not even hot, because hot has a judgment to it. I could say the sun is out, there are few clouds, and it is 85 degrees. That gives Kaylin data, facts. Whether or not Kaylin interprets that as good or bad weather is up to Kaylin or myself, but giving the information that we need. And then opposite action is going to impact the model on section 5, which is going to be our behaviors. And so changing our behavior can also change our emotions, which sounds kind of bananas, but we will also talk through that as well. So if Kaylin goes to the next slide, it's going to give you all the numbers again, but those stars are where opposite action and checking the facts plug into this model. So the thoughts about the event, that's going to be the check the facts skill, and the actions and behaviors, that's going to be the opposite action skill. So just trying to tie it all together from last time what we talked about. So checking the facts. Our emotions and our actions are often set off by our thoughts and interpretations of events, but not actually the events themselves. So again, if Kaylin runs into me at the office, we're upstairs, I have a bunch of paperwork in my hands, she runs into me, I throw the paperwork, they go over the balcony, there's a balcony at our office, go over the balcony, and Kaylin just keeps on going and just doesn't notice. My emotional reaction is probably going to actually be more influenced by the emotions and then the actions, the emotions and my interpretations, my thoughts and interpretations of this event than actually what happened. I mean, obviously Kaylin running into me, not ideal, but like if she ran into me, my thoughts about like, why the heck did Kaylin run into me? Oh my gosh, these papers are everywhere. I'm not going to get everything done on time. Ah! And then my interpretations of, oh, well, Kaylin clearly doesn't like me. Or what did I do to piss her off, or whatever it might be. How I feel about the situation is going to be impacted way more by those things than the actual situation itself. And also the same thing about our emotions can have big impacts on the thoughts we have about the events. Like if I'm upset, my brain is automatically going to go to like, oh, she hates me, she doesn't like me, I don't know what happened, what is going on, and kind of more of those things, those thoughts that tie in with that emotion, versus if my emotion is just kind of like, oh, I'm worried, maybe something's wrong with Kaylin, because that's something really unusual. That's going to really impact the outcome of how I feel or think about the event. So the idea is checking the facts of the actual event itself to then hopefully make an impact on how we think and feel about the event. So for example, you have a friend, Antonio, walks past you in the hall and did not say hi. That is a fact. We can observe that. We can see it, hear it, feel it, all of those things. This must mean he was mad at you. That's an interpretation. My emotions that go with that are anger, feeling rejected. Or he was feeling sick and going to the nurse's office. That's another interpretation that I could have, and my emotion could be worried. When I see Antonio later, I ask him why he didn't say hi, and he says he didn't see me because he was focusing on preparing for a test he was about to take. So that's a fact. It's a fact because Antonio told us when we asked the question. And our emotional impact is probably minimal, or we have no emotional response, because that makes sense. He didn't see us, he was studying for a test, versus our interpretations, which are he's mad or he's feeling sick. Another example is your mother tells you to wait a minute while she's talking to your brother before you can share some great news with her, and she doesn't come back to talk to you. So that's a fact. You have a situation, you can observe this. Mom is talking, she leaves, doesn't come back. Therefore, you think she doesn't really care about what you're doing and what's important to you. Emotions again, anger, feeling rejected, envy. Or maybe there's something wrong with your brother that she had to attend to, like he fell, or something fell on him. I don't know. Emotion then is worry and fear, and it's still again an interpretation. We don't know why mom didn't come back. We find out later that mom ran into the kitchen because she remembered she left the water boiling on the stove, or maybe the phone rang, or it could be a bunch of different things, right? Those are facts. We know because we found out because we asked mom, or maybe we walk into the kitchen to find mom, and our emotions might be disappointment because we wanted to talk to mom, or we might not have an emotional response because there isn't really needed one, because we're like, oh, okay, mom didn't come back because that's why. So there's 3 steps when it comes to checking the fact. First, ask, what is the emotion that I want to change? If we don't know what emotions we are experiencing, which is one of the reasons why we're practicing on identifying them and learning more about them and figuring out what are they telling us, we have to know what we're feeling first. So if I'm experiencing this emotion of, say, envy, so maybe Kaylin got a promotion and I didn't, and my feeling is envy. I have to know, what emotion do I want to change? So, okay, I'll change the emotion of envy. What is the event that's prompting my emotion? So challenging judgments, and the words that are in orange here, I highlighted them because they are also skills we've already covered in this DBT toolbox. So figuring out judgmental language. So challenging my judgments. So say Kaylin got promoted and I didn't. My judgments might be, well, I just wasn't good enough, or Kaylin doesn't really deserve that and I do, or I've been passed up a 3rd or 4th time. What is happening? My boss must not like me. Extremes could then be, thinking about all kind of like all or nothing thinking, like, oh my gosh, I got passed up again for a promotion. Clearly, I must be absolutely terrible at my job and I can do nothing well. Same with like black or white thinking. So challenging judgments if they are showing up. So what is prompting my emotion? Judgments are probably going to be impacting that. Describing the facts that I've observed through my senses. In this situation, it would be, I read an email that said Kaylin got a promotion. That is probably as much fact as I could really get about the situation, unless there was more detail to the email that said, starting next week, she will do this thing. That's about as facts as I can get. Anything else would be interpretations until I go and talk to my boss and say, hey boss, I thought I was going to get that promotion, but Kaylin got it. Can you tell me more? And then the third part of it is ask, am I interpreting the situation correctly? Are there other interpretations? So in this situation, maybe I did not get the promotion because my boss wants me to actually work on a different project, or I'm going to transfer to a different team, or it could be a bunch of other things. Or maybe Kaylin was more qualified for the promotion than I was. That's also a valid facts of the situation. Maybe it was something that I actually wasn't qualified for, and I thought that I was, and my boss had a really good reason why I wasn't. So these are 3 questions you can ask yourself, or 3 steps to checking the facts. Additional questions that you can ask yourself when you're checking the facts, if you want to go a little bit deeper, is, am I thinking in extremes, all or nothing, or catastrophizing thinking? There's lots of different thinking traps. I actually haven't covered many in this toolbox, but if you are curious about the different types, just simply Google thinking traps. You'll get a whole list, and they'll outline kind of the different ways our brains will think certain thoughts, usually negative thoughts. I'm definitely a catastrophizer. I always have really bizarre, weird plans where I'm like, yeah, but what if this happens? I, of course, need this random thing in case, I'm in my car and this happens. Another question you can ask yourself is, what is the likelihood of the worst thing happening? And trying to come up with a percentage estimate for the worst thing. So if I had another example of, I don't want to go to this party because I think people are going to make fun of me, what is the percentage of the likelihood of that happening? So if I thought about who is going to be there, is there somebody there that's made fun of me before? Yes, no. Have people made fun of me before? Yes, no. And figuring out, okay, what is the likelihood of this happen? And even if it were to happen, the third question, if the worst were to happen, can I imagine myself coping with it? So if I go to this party, people are making fun of me, can I imagine myself brushing it off or still having a good time or talking to friends and ignoring them, whatever it might be? If I can imagine it, so what? That's going to allow me to sort of also cope ahead, which is a skill we haven't talked about yet, I think. Another great DBT skill of, if I can imagine what's going to happen, I can then deal with it in a way that is more helpful than not. However, though, when it comes to coping ahead, I think us catastrophizers can sort of do that too much. I think we try to cope ahead and it actually ends up being catastrophizing thinking. But these are other questions you can ask yourself when it comes to checking the facts.
All right, so kind of switching gears a little bit, we're going to bring back the slide that we used last week when we were thinking about functions of emotions and describing emotions. And we're taking it just one step further. So if every emotion has a function, there is a biological reason why our emotions occur, there's also some sort of thing that we're supposed to do with that emotion. It's called an action urge that's associated with the emotion. So with fear, the function is that it alerts you to danger, and the impulse or the action urge associated with that is to either escape or avoid the thing. With anger, it alerts you to a blocked goal or your values being violated or whatever, and your action urge is to attack that thing or defend yourself. Sadness alerts you that something has been lost, and sadness, the action urge is to withdraw, get away from things a little bit. And guilt alerts you that you've acted against your values, so it has the action urge of hiding, asking for forgiveness, over-promising things, doing whatever you can to compensate for that. And since every emotion has an action urge, by changing our behaviors, we can also change our emotions. So again, thinking about that feedback loop where we can impact our behaviors and the way that we respond to emotions, because our emotions don't dictate our actions, it's just information, then we can impact that feedback loop and change our emotional state too. And this is what's called opposite action, is finding whatever action urge we're feeling and doing the exact opposite. So acting opposite again, acting opposite to the action urge when the emotion is doing more harm than good. So our emotions impact our behavior. And again, kind of thinking about what that video was saying, our behavior can also impact our emotions. So that feedback loop goes both ways, even if we don't normally think of it that way. And honestly, it feels really a lot more subtle because yes, we can use our behavior to actually change the situation. So like, we're calling our image of our like DBT model of emotions. If we are thinking about step 5, our actions that are outside of our body and how that impacts the consequences and how that impacts the prompting event number 2, changing your behavior and the way you respond to your emotion, that can absolutely have an effect. And remembering our mindfulness, willing hands or a half smile, changing your outwards behavior or your response to your emotion can also have another feedback loop within your mind that can also impact your emotional state. So it's both the 8 kind of wheel where the feedback loop inside and outside your body impacts each other, and it's the outside consequences potentially with other people that can have this loop work. So thinking about fear anxiety, if the impulse or the urge is to get away from the thing, the opposite action urge is to approach the thing. So go to events, places, do tasks or activities, or interact with people that you're afraid of, or people that make you nervous, or people that you're intimidated by. Do things to increase a sense of control and mastery over fears, and to demonstrate for yourself that you can tolerate that feeling while you're there and still approaching. Obviously, in these situations, it's not like we want you to approach a car that's rushing towards you on the freeway. This is solely for those situations where you've checked the facts and whatever action urge associated with your feeling is not going to fit. So you want to change that. With anger, instead of getting angry at someone or starting an argument or lashing out, you want to gently avoid. So you're not giving someone the cold shoulder and you're not just like doing super passive aggressive things, but you're just kind of subtly avoiding them. You're just not attacking them. So take time out and breathe in and out deeply and slowly, being kind or being neutral rather than being mean or attacking. So trying to have sympathy or empathy for the other person, as well as experiencing your own anger. For sadness, you, instead of isolating or withdrawing, you can get active. So again, it's another kind of approach thing, and building mastery and increasing pleasant activities. And that can even mean it's not just exercise, but getting active in terms of your response. So getting active with choosing coping, choosing something different than you normally would, getting something else in there that might mix things up a little bit more. With something like jealousy, the opposite action urge is to let go of controlling others' actions when it doesn't fit the facts or is not effective. Again, there's that reminder there. So stop spying or snooping on the person that you're feeling jealous over. Relax your face and body and kind of help with that feedback loop. Checking the facts is also a great one just to help with that. But whatever you are feeling jealous over, identifying what that thing is, and maybe giving yourself alternative thoughts or kind of checking your thinking tracks. Again, we've kind of referenced that a couple of times. And then with love, stop expressing love. And this is not the case where, like, obviously, if you are in relationships that are loving and that's appropriate, go ahead and keep doing that. But the places where maybe we don't want to feel love is with someone that it's maybe inappropriate to feel love with, like a teacher or a boss. Or in the case of, like, you've had a breakup and it really, really hurts that you still love this person. And if you want to stop acting on that feeling, you can change how much of that intensity is there by avoiding the person and distracting yourself from thoughts or feelings about that person. Reminding yourself my love does not fit the facts. And rehearsing the cons of loving this person or reminding yourself of what those are. And similarly, avoiding contact with things that remind you of that person. So again, kind of that gentle avoidance and not acting on feelings of love. So not telling this person that you love them, not going to this person's house or visiting them as often, all of those kinds of things. So opposite action, this was kind of referenced on the past two slides, but it works best when one, the emotion does not fit the facts, which is why this skill goes together with checking the facts. So an example of this that wouldn't fit the facts of a situation is terror with the idea of speaking in public. Because the idea that you have to be that afraid doesn't really fit the facts when it comes to public speaking. Like, yes, of course, you might feel a little bit nervous, but if you are at the point where you are terrified and crying and you're on the floor and really not able to do it, it doesn't fit the facts. Something that bad is likely not going to happen to you. Or it also wouldn't fit the facts when the intensity or duration of your emotion isn't effective for reaching your goals. So anger at traffic in the morning, if that is continuing throughout your day, that maybe doesn't fit the facts of your day anymore. Maybe anger is no longer super appropriate. So practicing something that is opposite to anger and doing that really actively and intentionally might help with reducing those feelings of anger. And it might impact the rest of your day by making that go a little bit more smoothly. It also works best when it's done all of the way. Opposite action is unfortunately one of the simplest to explain skills, but oftentimes really, really difficult to use because it really does take a lot of self-discipline, a lot of knowing yourself and being able to use your mindfulness skills to check in with yourself. And it really does require commitment to the thing. So you have to choose your opposite behavior, you have to choose your opposite words and your opposite thinking, and you have to actually embody that. So again, thinking about observe, describe, and participate are mindfulness skills. Those are going to be really, really, really important with opposite action and really just throwing yourself into it. Put your mind where you want it to be and put your behavior where you want it to be. So to summarize the 7 steps of opposite action, figure out the emotion that you're feeling. Of course, if we do not know what emotion we're feeling, then we cannot figure out what our action urge is. And then of course, we cannot figure out what our opposite action urge is going to be. So figuring out what we're feeling and what we want to change, similarly checking the facts, is going to be really important as a first step. And then, it's also important to ask, does the action urge that goes with this emotion, what is that? What is the thing that we actually want to do? And ask yourself, does this emotion fit the facts in this situation? So again, we're actually using our check the facts skill in the opposite action skill. And if yes, will acting on the emotions urge be effective? Because if it is effective, go ahead and do it. But if you're finding yourself being like, no, I think maybe this might make more problems, or it might make the situation worse, or it'll distract me and I'll get all these other host of things that I have to deal with. Maybe ask yourself, do I want to change the emotion? If yes, figure out what your opposite action is going to be and do the opposite action all of the way. You can repeat doing this, again, thinking about our feedback cycle over and over again until you actually notice that the emotion goes back down. That's kind of part of what it means to do it all the way. Because really our goal in this is to change that giant feedback loop. So we're not going to stop using this skill until we actually notice the results.
So, as always, there's a weird echo. As always, we want to give you at-home practice, which you guessed it, is practicing opposite action, which includes practicing checking the facts. So what you want to do first is within this next week or upcoming event, the past week, if you want to think through something that you could have done, or you have a situation and you want to think through how to respond or what to do, this is a great tool. So first you want to name the emotion. So say if your emotion was sadness, right, or loneliness, rating the intensity before, and then you'll rate the intensity after you go through these steps to see if it changes. Hopefully it will. Sometimes it might stay the same. Hopefully it won't get any worse though. So that is the first step, because as always, we like to give you guys data and see how these tools work, because it's a toolbox, right? So sometimes a screwdriver works, sometimes you need duct tape. And if you clearly are like, well, that was the screwdriver for my situation where I needed duct tape, then of course, don't use the screwdriver, use the duct tape for my really weird extended tool metaphor. So step one, similar to all the other things we've talked about so far, it's really important to figure out what is the emotion that you're experiencing and what is it that you want to change. Because if you don't know what that is, how are you going to actually do anything? So taking a moment to sit with the emotion, you're going to name it, figure out what is it and why do you want to change it. Step two, describe the prompting event. Who did what to whom, what led up to it, and what is it about this event that was a problem for you? Go into as much detail as you want. Write it all out. I'm always a big fan of like the thought and brain dumps onto pieces of paper. Go ahead and do that, everything that you can think of. Step three, looking through everything that you've written, check and ask yourself, am I interpreting this situation correctly? So this is the checking the facts. Are there other possible interpretations to whatever it was that you experienced? Are you thinking in extremes? So thinking about catastrophizing or black and white thinking, or, shoulding, if you should all over yourself, I should have done this, should have done that. What's the likelihood of the worst thing happening? If it happens, can you imagine coping with it? And writing all of that out as well and looking through what was it the event that sort of set off this emotion and what is actually really going on. Then looking at, does my emotion and its intensity fit the facts? So 0, not at all. 5, I am certain. Describe what you did to check the facts. I think a lot of times we can feel justified in whatever it is that we're feeling, because of course our feelings are valid. They are things that we experience, and we want to make sure it's actually aligning with our goals, what we want to do, and where we want to go, right? So say Kaylin said something to me that was really, really mean, and I want to punch Kaylin in the face. I think it is valid that Kaylin said something to me and it hurt my feelings. I feel like many people out there would be like, yes, it is just, it's justified. She said something, and therefore, yes, you should or could punch her in the face. Is punching Kaylin in the face going to align with my action, with like my goals and like my life worth living and things that are important to me, like keeping my job or keeping my friendship with Kaylin or a bunch of other things? It probably will not match with that if I choose to go through with that action behavior of punching Kaylin in the face. So I could still feel justified, but is it really checking the facts if it's going to get me what I want ultimately in the end, which could be, Kaylin has a black eye and I lose my job versus I keep my job and I figure out the situation with Kaylin. Do you want to take it off from there, Kaylin, now that I've described punching you in the face?
No, I'm like, damn, like first I get this weird promotion that I'm definitely not up for, and then I get punched in the face. Oh no. But next you're gonna want to observe and describe the emotion. So what is the current emotion that you're having? And I think this is a really good step too, for one, just honoring that, like Delaney was just saying, all of your feelings are gonna be valid. They are based on some sort of thinking and some sort of situation, whatever is going on. You are feeling a certain way because of things happening. That is okay, no matter what feeling you're having. But is it accurate or is it helpful for you? Is it something that you want to be feeling or is it something that you want to change? So if the current emotion is not something that you want to have or not something that you want to act on, maybe, or you just don't like the action urge that you're having, you're like, ooh, I really want to punch myself in the face, I guess, but you don't really want to, like, I can see that. Naming your action urge, I think honoring that and being like, oh, hey, like that is my impulse. I really want to do that. And especially if it is something like kind of violent like that, do the opposite all the way. And hey, notice that you totally avoided this thing that you had a strong impulse to do and you really didn't want to do. And that is still, that shows a lot of power, that shows a lot of control. And doing the opposite action all the way can be something that's really way more in line with your goals. And it's something that you can feel really proud about, even if you're not super proud of apparently whatever I was doing off in whatever land. Um, how do you feel after acting opposite to your emotion? I think checking in again with how you're emotionally feeling, and your own reactions to having chosen that, is really, really helpful for trying those things out. And then again, kind of going back to the first slide, and rating your intensity after again and seeing if that has changed at all. This would be the spot where Delaney and I would host questions or comments, but we do not have anyone joining us for the live, so we will skip over this. If you'd like to reach out to us, you are of course welcome to. While we are not currently accepting clients, you're welcome to reach out and ask about information or to see, checking back in for when we are taking new clients again. You're also of course welcome to follow us on social media just to get to know about any other kinds of projects that we're doing, like the one that Delaney and I are hosting right now. If you'd like to reach out to someone else for some sort of crisis, maybe doesn't quite reach up to 911, but you would like to talk to someone immediately, feel free to research or go out and reach out to your local crisis lines. We have a few listed here that we mentioned at the beginning of the presentation as well. And thank you, and we will maybe see you guys next time.
Thank you.